The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway in its entirety.
Note for note.
Note for note. This is kind of like Fab Four, those guys who like do note for note Beatles performances. We're doing note for note, sound effect for sound effect. Genesis.
Yeah, this is emitting like it's like ARP synthesizer, Mellotron, like Moog, like. What's tones coming out of this guy.
What's our Genesis tribute band? How about Dreamcast?
Dreamcast.
Mega Drive.
Oh, Mega Drive. Hell yeah. That's a cool
Genesis,
name.
Tribute band.
Yeah.
And do you have any connection to this material?
I do. So in college, my buddy Eddie was and still is a prog maestro, a prog head.
Is he a musician too, or an appreciator?
Yeah, like he him and his buddy Andy, and I think his name was John Paul. They had back in like right after high school like a prog band 3-piece. It was like drum, guitar, and piano. And but in college he had all his CDs and some vinyl, and he turned me on to like a whole bunch of like prog bands. He listened to like Jethro Tull.
Yeah, I like them.
Genesis, and that's what I found out about the Gabriel Collins like dichotomy.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't realize that until
I think I was in college when I learned about that too, and I was kind of fascinated by that. And like Peter Gabriel was like really on a roll. He was like maybe like the height of his of his solo career, and so it was like it was kind of cool learning like, oh, he used to be the guy in charge of Genesis. And like, what? Because like I only knew Genesis as Phil Collins.
Same here, and I kind of like Peter Gabriel's like Sledgehammer era.
Yeah, that would be the era I'm thinking of, like around that time.
And I like Huey Lewis and the News kind of blended a little with Gabriel Genesis.
Yeah, well, because
Gabriel Genesis, Gabriel solo
stuff. Yeah, because he was part of that era of like just like amazing music videos, like crazy music videos. It seems like it kind of flip-flopped, because there was a time when like when Peter Gabriel was like the height of cool, and Phil Collins was like kind of a dweeb.
Yeah.
And it seems like that's flip-flopped a little bit.
Yeah, like the because like Phil Collins,
I like them both.
I do too. I'm a Collins head. I'm a Gabriel fan too.
Yeah.
And like he listened to Pink Floyd.
Not Peter Gabriel, your friend Eddie.
My friend Eddie,
okay.
yeah. He listened to like Uriah Heep, Kansas. Yes. And there was this band called I think it was PFM or PMF. They were like Italian, and they were awesome. And that was like one of his favorites. They were like they were playing like with spaghetti and stuff and like meatballs. They're like there's like that guy's manning the meatballs.
Yeah, the Mario Brothers were in that band.
And like Can he listened to, and like Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
ELP. Yeah, like I was really into like the Beatles, and like specifically like Sgt. Pepper, and like those kind of albums where it's kind of like you're listening to a movie. It's like a soundscape, and there's like a forward momentum, and one song feeds into the other, and then themes come back, which kind of like later on got kind of, when the Who started doing like Tommy and stuff, that type of music started, like they started calling it like a rock opera, which is kind of how I think of it too. And then like prog kind of like spun out of that. It was kind of like taking that impulse and like doubling down on it. And so one of the things I heard like one of the bands saying was like, it's like picking up where the Beatles left off, because the Beatles, they did that for a little bit, and then they kind of had like a back to basics, like not all of them were as like enthusiastic about that direction. Some of them were more enthusiastic than others, but they all kind of went back to basics. Like Let It Be was kind of like a back to basics, and then Abbey Road, which was recorded after Let It Be, but they were reversed. They were reversed in release. But like Abbey Road, it was like a compromise. It was like the guys who wanted to just do straightforward rock and roll with like separate songs, you're in and you're out. That was side one, and then side two was like, okay, now side 2 is like the prog rock, like the
Yeah.
the rock opera or whatever. So it was like the compromise and stuff. And then their solo work, you know, like McCartney did some of that kind of stuff. Some of that, like he continued doing some of that kind of stuff. But all of them eventually got, you know, just back to sort of like hits. You know, like just like playing like straightforward rock and roll. You know,
that's the kind of like. Not that it was a knock on prog, but I'm always like, I want to go inward. Like, how interesting and cool can you make a song in like the shortest amount of time?
Yeah,
and we're like, but instead of going outwards,
right.
I go the other way. But then, but I also appreciate like,
yeah, like just as like a listener, like I mean, you know, if the band is willing to like make this like big statement, then go for it. And again, like it's kind of like equivalent to like in comics, where it's kind of like you got comic strips,
yeah,
you know, which is kind of like a single, or like a single issue, like the old-fashioned comics where it's like you buy one issue of a comic and it's a complete story, and then the next one's a reset or whatever. Like, I kind of like the continuing narrative. I like the graphic novel, you know, like it's kind of like that. Like I just enjoy that long form, and I like the play of it, and I like the different kind of sounds that you bring into it and stuff. Like I'm such a fan, and so that carried over into like some of this, you know, like Pink Floyd,
yes,
and yeah, like the Gabriel, like Gabriel era Genesis, but then Genesis does kind of continue on that path even after Peter leaves for like you know 3 or 4 more albums, and then you know kind of they become like an 80s hit machine, you know.
That's another interesting point I wanted to touch on too. Like it's always interesting seeing like the prog bands, they have their like Mike and the Mechanics kind of like scenario where or Asia, where like your prog guys always at some point will like do some like go for like the pop for a moment.
You have to be willing to change with the times. And also, you know, in the 80s it was just this like Bowie did it, everybody did it, you know. But also like there's a lot of pressure from the record companies that like even when they were doing this prog stuff, like The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, which is just like this, you know, elaborate story thing, you know, kind of like The Who's Tommy or something, this elaborate story with imagery. And if you get the album, it's got like all these liner notes and a whole storyline and photos and collages and things. And so you got that, but then the record company is like, we need something to play on the radio. Give us a single and a B-side, you know. So for this, it was like the Carpet Crawlers.
That's what I was thinking too, because I always like on the prog albums too. I will like try to pick out what were their the moments they were shooting for with the radio. Was it Carpet Crawlers?
Yeah, Carpet Crawlers. And it was like the Carpet Crawlers, and then there was one. It was I'm Counting Out Time. I'm counting out time. I'm counting out time. I think that was the A side, and then Carpet Crawlers is the B side. So those were the 2 hits, and I would hear those on the radio growing up and stuff. But I never heard any of this other stuff on the radio, you know. And I loved, and it was like you know, like a friend of mine. We were talking, and I was just telling him about how like you know I just learned about that Peter Gabriel used to be the lead singer of Genesis, and like that how that blew my mind. And I'm like, oh man, I gotta hear some of this stuff. I gotta check it out. And so he made a tape of Lamb Lies Down on Broadway for me and gave it to me. And like when I got that tape, I just played it over. I stayed up all night just listening to it over and over again, and like drawing and painting and stuff. And it was like it was just great. Amazing. Yeah, just like, you know. And
revisiting now, I haven't revisited it in a while. Like there's so many like the musical moments or motifs that like repeat themselves. Like The Light Goes Out on Broadway. The Light Goes Out on Broadway is pretty cool. I love the connection to like The Lamb Lies Down, like the opening, and like it's just time signature changes, interesting like soundscapes. It's just it's the total package. It's awesome, and it's long, but it doesn't feel long.
It doesn't feel long. It takes you on a journey. You know, there's some instrumentals, there's some experimentation, which there's like room for that, but you do get enough kind of like pop in there that it's not just like completely ponderous. And like these bands, they all kind of walk that line, and they all have their moments where it's like, okay, are you guys running short on material? Like, and I do like I'm looking at you, Pink Floyd. Like I love Pink Floyd, but there's a couple Pink Floyd albums where it's like the material's pretty, the writing's pretty thin, and like I mean, you know, we'll do a separate Pink Floyd episode, but
don't get me wrong, I love like jazz, like your jamscapes and like your improvisation, but like I think I get jam bands and prog rock. Like I'm not in the Fish scene,
right? Yeah,
but I'm more in the prog scene.
Well, because what happens with the prog rock, which I think kind of, and it's like short for progressive. You know, like they're trying to move the art form forward, which I'm all for.
Yeah.
You know, and move it for and experiment and bring it into like interesting realms and stuff. But I think like part of like one of the things that differentiates it from like maybe like I don't know rock opera or like what the Beatles were doing or whatever is that it seems like there's this emphasis on like technical musicianship and virtuosity. You know, and because I think it is also like it's a very attractive genre for like nerds, like music nerds.
Yes.
You know, like and so like a music nerd like. It's somebody who is like has all this technical skill and has been studying and the stuff and their skills are getting better and better and like they don't want to just throw that out the window just because they're playing rock and roll like you know they want and so they start bringing that and then sometimes that aspect starts to take over.
Yeah, it's
and,
like
you know, and then
hey,
becomes a little cold. You know?
Let's get a song. That's why it's like Eddie Van Halen's greater than Yngwie Malmsteen.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's such a fine line. It's such a fine line. You know. But that's where my sweet spot is where it's got like a little bit of that, but like you know some like real you know meat and potatoes kind of like you know entertaining you know like pop and.
This album is so
punch.
rocking.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it's like
rocks,
it's not like you wouldn't think that nerds were playing it.
Yeah,
it's like
right,
it's got a tough. It's tough.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a tough edge.
Yeah.
Not that Genesis is a bunch of nerds.
Right. No, and I guess like the theatricality is well, because I think like in the '80s, the nerd aesthetic is like. That's the thing of the day. Like they all start looking like you know. And when they're doing I can't dance, and they're all lined up, you know, and they're wearing like you know like that is nerd. You know, especially when you're a kid.
Oh my
that,
god!
You're like okay, these are like accountants or something.
I think we mentioned it on like multiple other episodes. I thought the coolest thing that ever existed was the. When they performed the song in Revenge of the Nerds.
Right, yes. Yeah, like
I was like, this is the coolest shit I've ever seen.
Yeah, and like, you know, Phil Collins was probably like 31 when he did that song that you know, We Can't Dance, and it's like, who is that fossil? You know,
I can't dance because I got osteoporosis.
Right, yeah.
Osteoporosis. I can't dance. Oh because I threw out my back or whatever.
I told you like, you know, when I was little and I first heard No Reply, like it sounded like it was C-3PO singing in a rock band. So of course I was on board, you know.
Right there.
And it was on a commercial. It was like on a commercial for some kind of like compilation album or something. So like I saw like you know Phil Collins playing, and it's like out of focus, and there's like all this like red light or something on him, but he's like out of focus, and he's singing as he's playing the drums. So that was impressive. Too.
I still think. I'm still blown away by somebody being the lead vocalist of the band playing the drums.
Yeah.
That's still, like, that blows my mind.
Well, I remember, like, talking to my grandparents, and, like, they were saying that, like, when they were young, like, when they were teenagers and stuff, listening to music, the drummer was the big
band
attraction.
leader.
Yeah, he was the leader, and he was the one everybody came to see, was the drummer, you know? And everything else was secondary.
Secondary to the drummer.
Yeah.
I think, like, I was reading... yeah, and
I guess that would be Gene Krupa. That's the name I always heard. Gene Krupa. That would be like
cool.
that era, you know. But yeah, like at the beginning of Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, there's all this.
I love that part.
Yeah, all this kind of stuff. Do you have any bells? Because you know, there's that part where it's ding ling ling ling, and they're like ringing a bell. It's like. But they're actually doing notes. Like it's not nonsense. Like they're doing like runs and stuff. Oh, it's a B flat. And the lamb lies down on Broadway. Early morning Manhattan, ocean winds blow on the land. Some here brings a stillness to the air. No man-made light at night is very bright as the neons dim to the cold of white. Royal Imperial Aristocrat wipes his gun. He's forgotten what he did, and the man lies down on Broadway. On Broadway, it seems the lights are always bright on Broadway. It seems there's always magic in the air. They say the lights are always bright on Broadway. On Broadway, on celluloid.
Oh, I love it.
The crawlers cover the floor in the red and ochre corridor for a second sight of feeling. There's no lamb's blood than before. They're moving in time to a heavy wooden door where the needle's eye is winking, closing on the pour. We gotta get in to get out. We gotta get in to get out. We gotta get in to get out. There's only one direction in the faces that I've seen. Sunlight, it takes root in every tree. They are pulled up by the magnet, believing they're free. We gotta get in to get out. Mild-mannered supermen are held in kryptonite, and the wise and foolish virgins giggle with their bodies glowing bright. Through the door a harvest feast is lit by candlelight. It's the bottom of a staircase that spirals out of sight. The carpet crawlers heed their callers. We gotta get in to get out. We gotta get in to get out. The porcelain mannequin with shattered skin fears attack, and the tickler takes his tickle back. Oh, the carpet crawlers heed their callers. We gotta get in to get out. We gotta get in to get out. We gotta get in to get out. I see faces and traces of home. Well, I'd like to see some action. shave it off from the way that I feel. All you progressive hypocrites, hand out the trash. So I burned it to ash, and I've tasted the strongest meats and laid them down on colored sheets. When you're out in the streets with your mainline connection.
I was trying to do that.
Echoes in the Broadway Everglades with their mythical Madonnas walking in their shades. Lenny Bruce declares the truth and plays his other hand. Marshall McLuhan, casual viewing, buried in the sand. Sirens on the rooftops wailing, but there's no ship sailing. Here's where the good part. Groucho with his movies trailing stands alone with his punchline failing. Groucho with his movies trailing stands alone with his punchlines.
It's like the light lies down might be.
Yeah, it's a good, like, because that's the beauty of these like rock operas and stuff is they set up a motif and then they return to it. And sometimes and then sometimes when they return to it, they bring in some of the other motifs they've collected along the way. It's like it's just
beautiful.
Great. Yeah,
it's beautiful.
Yeah. Next time we gotta create our own original rock opera. Oh, this one's so low it doesn't hear that.
Oh yeah, it's a deep one.
As he walks along the gorge's edge, he meets a scent of yesteryear. The window in a bank above his head reveals his home amidst the streets. Destroyed tomorrow by an unknown hand, my home. And the light dies down, 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 down on Broadway. But as the skylight beckons him, he hears a scream from far below. Within the raging water rides a foam. A brother John, he cries for help. The gate is fading now, but open wide. If John is drowning, I must decide between the freedom I had in the rat race or stay here forever in this forsaken place. Hey, John! And the light dies down, 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 down on Broadway. On Broadway. On Broadway. The city lights are always bright on Broadway. The city lights are always bright on Broadway. On Broadway. Those rock operas, they're a journey. You know, it's the hero's journey, and we
We
made
went
it.
to the end.
Yeah.
I love that how that closes it. Perfect
Yeah.
like bookends. I love that riff. Like all the instruments are like have hooks going on.
Mm-hmm.
There's like that bass.
Yeah.
Boom, doom,
Yeah,
boom.
and like Genesis was like 10 guys. There's just 2 of us here.
Yeah, it sounded like 10.
2 guys from Pittsburgh riding the screens like.
Oh man, that'd be.
And that's like.
Oh my god. What's the riff for that?
It's not. Yeah, it's not.
Dude, that's
Partway down the slope, there's not much hope. Evil Knievel, you got nothing on me. So be on the lookout for Mega Drive, our Genesis tribute band. The big, hero's journey. It's gonna be a quest to find Mike's shirt.
Mike Katz.
To find Mike Katz's
missing shirt.
Yeah, exactly. That's gonna be the MacGuffin. That's gonna be like the Holy Grail. Mike Katz's missing shirt. And just like the Holy Grail, we're not even sure if it actually exists.
It's like
Mike Katz's shirt. He cries for help. Be on the lookout for that. I'm Tom Scioli, author of I Am Stan, a graphic biography of the legendary Stan Lee. And there's a pre-order link in the show notes below to pre-order that book, along with Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics. You can also pre-order the softcover version at that same link.
I'm at Zeoli.
And you can follow me on Twitter at Tom Scioli or on Instagram at Tom_Scioli.
Follow me on Instagram at cinema_tune.